I mean, he's just a loader, her dad said, waving his glass of Burrolo like he was shooing away a bad smell. Good guy, though. Big heart. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. Just turned the wine glass slowly in my hand and pretended to study the legs. Across the table, her sister giggled the way only someone who's never done real work can. Didn't he, like, fix a forklift last month? So handy. My Tesla needs a tire rotation. Maybe he can pop by. Laughter erupted. The investors joined in. A few raised their glasses to me mockingly. Cheers to the forklift guy. One even snapped a photo like I was a novelty act at a dinner theater. And her? She didn't even look up. Just kept scrolling through her phone, absently pushing kale around on her plate. She didn't say a word in my defense. Didn't shut her sister down. Didn't flinch when her father turned me into the dinner clown in front of some of the most connected people in Silicon Valley. It's funny how silence can hum louder than shouting. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because I already knew something they didn't. I had the term sheet in my pocket. Closed that morning. Kronos Logistics. Stealth mode. Seed round led by an angel group in Singapore. Anonymous LLC. Registered under a holding entity I'd structured offshore 2 years prior. While they laughed, I had already moved their queen 4 plays ago. They just didn't know it yet. Oh, and if you're one of the 97% of listeners who haven't hit subscribe yet, maybe do it now? These stories are built by a small team who work hard to keep them coming daily. You hitting that button tells us we're on the right track. Thanks, legend. Back to the show. The setting was surgical in its opulence. Her father's estate stretched across 20 acres of vineyard-adjacent land in Marin. Long wooden table dressed in bone-white linen. Chandelier above us made of recycled wine barrels or some other overpriced design choice that screamed, I pay architects to impress other rich people. The man to my left was a partner at a VC firm that turned down my startup 3 months ago. Said it lacked technical clarity. Cute. He asked me how warehouse work was going. I told him, boxes still need stacking. Logistics is eternal. He smirked, turned away. I could already feel the punchline forming in his throat, dying to be shared over digestives. They saw my presence as an awkward token of my fiancée's poor judgment. She had potential, they liked her. Whipsmart, went to Stanford, had that slick startup polish. But dating the help? That was her phase. The sisters had bets on how long until she upgraded. And I let them perform. Because 5 years ago, when I was breaking down pallets at 3 a.m. in a freezing warehouse outside Modesto, I started seeing the flaws. Not just in supply chains, but in the way decisions were made. Broken routes. Useless middle layers. The way return policies bled margins dry. I didn't just lift boxes, I dissected them. Every barcode, every scan time, every inefficient route mapped in my head until I saw patterns nobody was tracking. That night, as the wine flowed and the mockery sharpened, one of the investors leaned in. You know, he slurred, maybe your startup could be a box stacking simulator. Gamify the grind, right? They roared. Even the waiter, God bless him, winced. I set my glass down and stood. Quietly. No dramatics. Excuse me, I said. Just need to take a call. No one stopped me. Why would they? Just the loader. Forklift guy. The +1. I walked out onto the balcony and stared across the vineyard. My phone buzzed. Transfer complete. The text read. Full seed. All funds cleared. I took a deep breath. It wasn't the money. It was the silence I craved. The kind that comes before the storm, when the air thickens and no one knows why their skin feels tight. Back inside, dessert was served. Creme brulee with some lavender nonsense. Her father's voice boomed again. God help me if he tries to pitch at this table. More laughter. But I wasn't pitching. Not anymore. I was already building what would bury their portfolios. One delivery route at a time. It started with a clipboard. Not mine, Frankie's. He was the shift supervisor back when I worked graveyard at Lintel Fulfillment in Stockton. Third-party logistics. Brutal hours. Breakroom microwave always smelled like burnt Hot Pockets and regret. Frankie's clipboard was chaos. Scribbled truck IDs, delivery reroutes, missed pickups, delayed returns. Every night, same issues. Every night, same dumb fixes. But something clicked. One night, I asked him, why are we sending 3 trucks to the same zip code 4 hours apart? He blinked. 'Cause that's how the system split the route. I nodded, but I started watching. Pulling data when I could. Scan logs. Dispatch sheets. I wasn't supposed to. But no one cared about the guy wiping down the conveyor belts. I could have been building bombs in the back office and management wouldn't have noticed. So I started writing. On my lunch breaks, I mapped what I saw. Excel at first, then Python scripts, then models. They weren't pretty, but they worked. I called it Project Kronos after a Greek helmet I saw once in a museum as a kid. Stuck with me. Something about protection through strategy. Felt right. The first version just rerouted returns. Made suggestions to consolidate failed deliveries. My laptop couldn't even run it all at once. I had to simulate in chunks. It wasn't glamorous. I coded between shrink-wrap cycles and clocked in early to use the shared terminal before the others showed up. I slept 4 hours a day, ate nothing that couldn't be microwaved in 60 seconds, and hadn't seen my mom in months. But for the first time, it all made sense. The world was built on logistics, and logistics were built on inefficiency. It wasn't about changing the system. It was about understanding it better than anyone else. I knew I needed cover. No one funds a startup from a warehouse dock. Not in this town. So I called Damon. He was a roommate from college. Business major. Mid-level sales job now, but clean-cut, charming. A natural face for polished decks and pitch meetings. Want to be the founder of a logistics company? I asked. He laughed. Wait, like trucks and stuff? Exactly. You'll need to sit through a few VC calls, but I'll run ops. Everything back end. I get equity? You get plausible deniability. He paused. I'm listening. We signed docs the next day. Delaware LLC. I used an alias as the incorporator and funneled ownership through a second company I'd set up a year earlier. Purely for tax reasons, but now it served as a perfect veil. Kronos was born. At first, we operated like a tech-savvy courier firm. Small accounts. Just enough to test the model in the wild. The pitch was basic. Real-time route optimization for local drops. But behind the scenes, it was already predicting customer churn, adjusting warehouse pick paths, and assigning deliveries by predicted driver fatigue. My code was evolving with every scan, every drop, every return. I used my employee login at Lintel to pull real-case anomalies and test response times. No one noticed. They thought I was just another shift grunt with too much time and not enough ambition. Meanwhile, I had pilot tests showing 14% efficiency gains across 6 zip codes. We didn't need an office. We needed data, and I was swimming in it. I remember the night it became real. A driver pulled me aside during my smoke break. Hey, loader guy, he said, half laughing. I don't know what you changed, but these new routes? I'm getting home an hour early. My wife thinks I got fired. I shrugged. Lucky day, I guess. Inside, my heart pounded. That route had been Kronos optimized. I stayed invisible on purpose. I let Damon take credit. Let him show up to meetings with slick pitch decks and just enough buzzwords to stay interesting. He never asked too many questions. That was part of the deal. Don't touch the core engine. Don't talk to the dev team because there wasn't one. It was just me. Every system they mocked, every network they believed was untouchable, was built on delay, bloat, and complacency. Kronos wasn't built to compete. It was built to quietly replace them. No press. No launch party. Just quiet, ruthless efficiency eating away at their margins. By the time they'd even see my name, it'd already be too late. I proposed with a ring I'd saved for over a year to buy. A solitaire diamond, simple, clean, no halo or pave nonsense. Just clarity. That was always the point. We were standing on the cliff trail just above the Point Reyes Inlet. Wind slicing through the pines, fog curling like smoke around her boots. She said yes before I even finished the sentence. Threw her arms around me, tears in her eyes. Or maybe mist. I wanted to believe the first one. We went to dinner that night. Nothing fancy. Just tacos and horchata at a place we both liked. She was giddy, snapping selfies, texting her sister. I watched her scroll, type, delete, type again. Then she paused. This okay? She asked, flashing her phone screen for a second before hitting post. Caught it. Loader life. But cute ring red heart. I laughed, nodded, but something inside me stiffened. Later that night, while she was brushing her teeth and humming some mindless pop song in the bathroom, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. Kronos' back-end dashboard flickered to life. I stared at the access logs, the list of authorized users. She wasn't on payroll. Never was. But once, maybe 6 months ago, I'd shown her a few of my dashboards, just to explain why I was always working on that weird spreadsheet stuff. She'd nodded along, half listening. Said something like, "You're such a nerd," before crawling into bed. I'd let it slide. Let her linger in the periphery of my work. Not anymore. I revoked everything. Every shared folder, every test link, every loose permission that might one day tie back to her. Gone. I watched her name vanish from the audit trail, one deletion at a time. Then I encrypted the sandbox she'd once peeked into, just in case. I told myself it was just good security hygiene. But it wasn't. It was a reaction. Because earlier that afternoon, while scrolling through her post's comments, I saw it. Upgraded from forklift to fiancé. Clapping hands, fire you go. Girl. Another. Bet he brings you packages, and snacks face with tears of joy. She'd replied with a laughing emoji. Nothing else. No correction. No, actually, he's building something amazing. No, you guys don't even know. Just silence. The same silence she gave her father and sister when they mocked me at that dinner. Only now it had a caption. And that caption had a cost. It's funny how betrayal doesn't always come in screaming matches or slammed doors. Sometimes it slides in quietly, dressed up in Instagram filters and just a joke tone. What she didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that I was never angry at the mockery. I was angry at the disbelief behind it. The condescension. The assumption that who I was in that moment was all I'd ever be. The ring fit her perfectly. So did the pedestal she'd placed herself on. I didn't say anything. Didn't confront her. That would have been messy, emotional, unstrategic. Instead, I watched her fall asleep, curled up in my t-shirt, her hand draped over my chest, diamond catching the streetlight glow from the window. And I made a decision. Not to leave. Not yet. But to prepare. From that point forward, I would love her the way I engineered logistics with structure, protocols, backups, and an exit plan. Because anyone who sees you as a punchline during your build phase doesn't deserve to stand beside you during the launch. And she just proved she wasn't an ally. She was a liability. Started small. A single distributor out of Reno, running 12 trucks and drowning in missed KPIs. Damon pitched Kronos to them as data-driven route logic that actually works. No buzzwords, no vaporware. They were desperate. Gave us a 90-day trial just to shut him up. On day 72, their fleet manager called him breathless. "You saved my ass." Damon texted me the quote with 3 fire emojis. But I didn't celebrate. I reran the model, watched the optimization curves level out, then pushed a silent update to version 1.4. Minor patch, major shift. Because the real breakthrough wasn't the algorithm. It was what came next. The distributor's fuel use dropped 11%. Their drivers started skipping overtime. Warehouse clutter eased. Customers got same-day deliveries without paying for premium. Word traveled. 2 weeks later, we got a DM on our no-name LinkedIn page. An exec from a mid-tier e-commerce firm asking if we could consult on their West Coast distribution. Damon met them over drinks. I sent a sandbox version of the Kronos API with access restricted to one node. By the end of the quarter, they licensed the full stack. 18% reduction in delivery overhead. 9.5% lift in on-time drop-offs. Refunds down. Ratings up. And quietly, very quietly, they started pulling contracts from bigger names. One of those contracts went to them from Everpath Ventures, her dad's portfolio company. He ranted about it during brunch, slicing into duck confit like it personally offended him. Some discount logistics outfit is eating the damn contract we've held for 4 years. Who the hell is Kronos anyway? Her spoon paused midair. Yeah, Dad says the market's shifting fast. Even our suppliers are spooked. Bunch of no-name nobodies popping up. She sipped her mimosa like it was nothing. I watched the sunlight refract through the glass and scatter across her engagement ring. I didn't say a word, just nodded. I'd already updated Kronos' onboarding protocol that morning. New vendors were queuing up. 3 more licenses pending review. That no-name nobody had already been approached by a logistics platform serving 17 states. They wanted exclusive rights. We declined. I wasn't building this to sell. I was building it to last. What no one grasped. Not her, not her father, not the investors who laughed over imported wine and AI buzzword salads, was that logistics wasn't sexy. It didn't need to be. It just needed to work. I wasn't disrupting the supply chain. I was replacing it with one that didn't need middlemen and VC-thirsty parasites. Every line of code I deployed erased another layer of their empire. And yet I never raised my voice, never claimed revenge, Never threw a tantrum or played the bitter genius card. I just built. Silently. Relentlessly. And they never looked at me twice. That week, she posted another photo of us. Sunset behind us, arms locked, ring glowing. Caption: Love and logistics yellow heart. One of her friends commented, "Still can't believe you're marrying a warehouse guy's smiling face with heart eyes, such a rom-com." I liked the comment. Then I pushed an update that cut Kronos' runtime latency by 6%. Because love's nice, but optimization, that's forever. It happened in a back booth of a half-dead ramen joint in Oakland. Cheap neon, mismatched stools. The kind of place where no one asks questions and the Wi-Fi always cuts out right before you hit send. Damon slid the folder across the table between bites of pork belly. "All yours, man. Took longer than I thought, but it's clean. You're CEO now. Founder. Majority shareholder. IP owner. Everything." I didn't touch the folder immediately. I let it sit, just looked at him. "You sure?" I asked. Damon grinned. "I was never gonna build this thing. Hell, I still don't even know how half your dashboard works. I just wanted to be along for the ride. And now I'm COO of a 7-figure SaaS logistics firm with no debt and no investor leeches. So yeah, I'm sure." He meant it. Damon had always been a transactional optimist. Smart enough to know where the value was, humble enough not to get in its way. I signed the papers slowly. Ink met paper. Pages flipped. Ownership transferred. I became the legal public face of Kronos. But we agreed no press yet. No announcement. Not until the restructuring was done and the legal trails cooled. I didn't need noise, I needed clarity. The same night, I met her for dinner. She wore red, her celebration dress. She called it. We had oysters. She ordered Rose. "You're quiet," she said, brushing her hair behind one ear. "Just thinking," I replied. "Long week." She smiled. "Well, you deserve some good luck. You've been grinding so hard lately. Loader to leader arc, right?" She thought it was a joke. I didn't laugh. The next morning, we went to the notary's office. A clean building in the marina. Sunlight bouncing off water and glass. Prenup signing. Her idea months ago. She'd brought it up casually, with a laugh. "Not that you have assets," she said. "But it's just smart, right? Clean lines, no drama." I agreed immediately. No protest. No offense. She sent her father's lawyer the draft. Clause 4.6, c, was especially pointed. In the event of marriage dissolution or public disparagement by the spouse's family that impacts reputation or professional standing, all shared asset claims are voided. They laughed about it. "No risk there," her sister had joked. "Unless we start a smear campaign." Everyone signed it like it was a formality. Her lawyer barely read it. My attorney was a ghost in the room, quiet and precise, like a scalpel. She looked radiant that day. Called it our grown-up moment. What she didn't know, what no one in that office knew, was that the ink had barely dried on Kronos' full IP consolidation under my name. That prenup? It didn't just protect her from the man she thought she was marrying. It protected me from the woman I knew she really was. She never asked what I owned. Never questioned why I didn't hesitate. She thought she was marrying potential, not legacy. Afterward, we walked along the marina. She linked arms with me, still glowing. "I love how chill you are about all this," she said. I smiled. "I don't see the point of drama." We watched a seaplane take off across the bay. "That's why we work," she said. "I'm the chaos, you're the calm." She had no idea that beneath my calm was calculus. That every step forward was the placement of a future legal detonation. And when it finally went off, no screaming, no courtroom, just ink, timing, and the unshakable fact that she'd signed her way into irrelevance. The trap was set. Perfectly. Legally. Silently. The place was called Silicon Vintage, a laughably on-the-nose name for a members only club where tech dinosaurs gathered to drink $800 Napa Reds and complain about how Gen Z doesn't hustle anymore. Leather chairs, brass fixtures, zero-cell reception. Because when you're this rich, nothing urgent ever happens to you. Her father had a cigar in one hand before the entree even arrived, chuckling about a failed SPAC he pulled out of just in time. Across from him sat a young startup founder with the kind of haircut you only get when you let your Series B money do the talking. "You know," her dad said, loud enough for half the table to hear, "the real problem these days is disruption without loyalty. All these tiny firms undercutting the supply chain, gutting contracts, burning bridges. There's no honor left in business." He gestured toward the vintage bottle being poured. Used to be. A man's word was his pitch deck. Everyone chuckled. A couple of the older VCs nodded solemnly. The younger ones glanced around, sensing this was one of those dinners where you nodded, shut up, and let the old money whine. I didn't speak. I rarely did at these things. She leaned closer to her sister, wine glass tilting in her fingers like a dagger waiting for the tablecloth. At least I'm not marrying one of those guys, she said, loud enough to sting. You know, the app bros, the pitch deck hustlers. Can you imagine? Laughter rolled across the table like thunder off polished oak. I watched her lips curl into that familiar smirk, half performance, half validation seeking. My eyes locked with hers. You sure you're not? I said calmly. The laughter faltered. Her sister's fork froze mid-air. She blinked, confused. What? I smiled. Nothing. The table tried to recover. A new anecdote, a toast to someone's recent acquisition. The founder across from me gave me a pity glance, the kind reserved for people who clearly didn't belong in the room but were tolerated for their relationship proximity to power. I looked at my watch. Dessert was 30 minutes out. I wouldn't be staying. The TV crew was already set up across town in a studio rented under my holding company's name. They'd requested a brief segment, the stealth startup reshaping logistics in the western U.S. I told them 20 minutes. Nothing live. No questions about my fiancé or my background. They agreed. As I stood, her father looked up. Leaving so soon? Got a call, I said. Some tiny firm gutting contracts. You know how it is. He laughed again, oblivious. Tell them loyalty matters. I nodded. Always does. She didn't stand. Didn't ask where I was going. Just watched me button my jacket with the same expression you give someone going to pick up dry cleaning. I walked past sommeliers, leather-bound stock portfolios, and tax-sheltered egos. Past the painting of the founder of the club, some railroad tycoon who probably died thinking he was irreplaceable. Outside, the air was cleaner. Not because I was free of them, because I was above them now, and they still hadn't looked up. They thought I was still the loader. They hadn't yet heard the words that were already being rehearsed by the anchor, off-camera. And tonight, we sit down with the anonymous force behind one of Tech Valley's most disruptive logistics startups. Who is the CEO no one saw coming? I straightened my collar and walked toward the Blacktown car waiting at the curb. Strategic exit. No plates broken. No voices raised. The only sound was the soft click of the door closing behind me. The news segment aired at 8:03 p.m., right as the creme brulee hit the table at her father's post-dinner lounge. The investors were still nursing their scotch, full of venison and self-satisfaction, when the flat screen on the far wall, usually reserved for muted golf or commodity tickers, suddenly brightened with a Tech Valley Network alert. Tonight's exclusive, the anchor announced, a rare on-camera moment from the mysterious logistics firm that's been quietly rewriting the rules of distribution infrastructure on the West Coast. Her father didn't look up at first, too busy explaining to a junior fund manager why direct-to-consumer pet food was the next gold rush. But her sister caught it. Wait, isn't that? The screen cut to me, not the me in coveralls, not the fixes forklifts me. This version wore a tailored slate gray suit, no tie, clean-shaven, calm, sharp, backlit by the soft gradient of Kronos' minimalist logo slowly pulsing behind me. The anchor's voice overlaid. After a year in stealth mode, Kronos Logistics has surged onto the radar of top-tier firms with a proprietary algorithm reducing delivery costs by nearly 20% across multiple regions. And tonight, meet the mind behind the model. The CEO you've never heard of. Until now, the room went still. Even the bartender stopped wiping glasses. Her father turned, slow and confused. The camera panned closer. My name filled the bottom third of the screen in bold white font. Not a nickname. Not an LLC alias. My full legal name. No hiding. No buffer. Just me. What the hell? Her sister whispered. Fork half raised to her mouth, frozen mid-bite. That's him. Across town, she sat in the corner of a bar, sipping a lavender gin fizz, halfway through her second story about how her fiancé had such a sweet blue-collar work ethic. Her phone buzzed. Then again. Group chats lit up. Screenshots. Reactions. Confused emojis. A friend texted, "Wait, is this your guy?" Then came the video. Someone at the investor lounge recorded it. The moment the Kronos logo faded into view, and the man everyone thought was a glorified warehouse clerk sat across from a reporter explaining why outdated fleet logic had cost companies like Everpath Ventures millions. Her dad's name wasn't mentioned, but the companies bleeding out were his. "I'm sorry, what?" she said, staring at her phone. "What is this?" The bartender muted the music. "Babe," she said, hitting call. Straight to voicemail. She hit it again. Then again. Nothing. Back on the screen, I kept speaking. Calm. Precise. A short segment about disruption through quiet logic. About how modern infrastructure fails not from explosions but erosion. One inefficiency at a time. I finished with a nod and a single sentence. The less noise we make, the more they underestimate us. And then I stood and walked off camera. No product pitch. No brand push. No flashy slogan. Just silence. A silence that filled every room I'd ever been dismissed in. Her sister stood up, still watching. "Dad, did you know?" Her father's face had drained of color. His cigar had burned to ash. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because the punchline was no longer mine to deliver. It belonged to the screen. To the moment. To the reveal that the man they mocked had never been trying to belong. He'd been building a future they were no longer invited to. The first thing to vanish was the confidence. Not gradually. Not like steam off a latte. More like a trapdoor under a stage. Sudden, humiliating, and very, very public. Her father spent the night glued to his phone, barking orders at junior partners who suddenly had a lot of questions about that Kronos thing. His email outbox filled with subject lines like, urgent, missed opportunity, and need immediate briefing. Where's our analyst? They didn't have answers. Because months ago, back when I was still nodding politely at vineyard dinners and pretending not to hear the mockery, his VC fund had passed on Kronos. Not just passed. Laughed. A junior associate flagged us after Damon's quiet pitch. Flagged the efficiency projections. Flagged the infrastructure claims. Flagged me, the anonymous technical partner who refused to do face-to-face meetings. Her father's comment on the rejection note? Tell them to come back after their first collapse. He didn't even remember writing it. But I did. Because Damon forwarded it to me that same night. I printed it. Framed it. Hung it behind my desk. Just for days like this. And now, that same VC fund was hemorrhaging value. Their prized portfolio company, Everpath Retail, had rejected a licensing offer from Kronos 3 months ago. On his advice, he called it logistics vaporware. Last week, that company lost their distribution contract to a mid-sized competitor running my software. Today, that competitor's valuation tripled. He called their CEO, got routed to voicemail. Left 4 messages. No reply. His Slack channel filled with cold-shouldered reactions. A few partners started scrubbing mentions of Everpath from their bios. Damage control became impossible when TechCrunch published a story titled, "The Loader Who Built a Supply Chain Empire." Subheading? VC giants mocked his background. Now they're losing contracts to him. I didn't write the article. Didn't need to. Meanwhile, her sister was in a full PR panic. She tried to spin it on socials. OMG, can't believe I knew him before he was famous, LOL nail polish. With a pic of me in a hoodie from 2 years ago. The comments turned quick. Didn't you say he fixed forklifts? Girl, you dragged him in that rom-com post. Yikes. This aged like milk. I didn't reply. I never replied. And her? She emailed. Subject: we need to talk. The body was just 1 sentence. I didn't know. I didn't understand what you were building. I stared at it for a full minute. Then typed back. You already did, just not to me. Sent. She tried calling right after. Blocked. Because when you spend your breath describing someone as less than, don't act surprised when they become unreachable once they're more than. At her father's firm, boardroom tension morphed into panic. LPs demanded accountability. One asked point-blank why they had passed on what was now being called the quietest unicorn in logistics. The managing partner threw up his hands. I don't know. Ask Mitchell. But Mitchell, the junior analyst who'd flagged us, had left the firm last month. To work at Kronos. Full salary. Equity. Signing bonus. He sent me a screenshot of the meltdown in their Slack. Caption: told you they'd choke. I replied with a thumbs up. Across the bridge, her father tried calling Damon. Damon declined. Then texted me. He sounds like he's on the edge of a heart attack. I responded, let him sweat. We didn't need vengeance. We had velocity. And velocity, unlike rage, scales beautifully. She showed up in a silk blouse and panic. No cameras, no makeup, no entourage, just her and the tight clack of desperate heels in an echoing hallway, arriving at my apartment door with one goal: control the narrative. Except the door didn't open. Not because I wasn't answering, because I wasn't there. The apartment was empty, vacuumed, stripped clean, not abandoned, cleared, like a phase of life removed from a hard drive. No note, no mess, no trace of what she once thought she owned. Just a single envelope taped to the inside of the doorframe, tucked beneath the light switch. It wasn't addressed. It didn't need to be. Inside, her copy of the prenup. The same document she'd laughed through during that appointment in the marina. She called her lawyer the same afternoon, voice cracking on the first syllable. "There's a clause," she said. "Section, I don't know. Something about." He interrupted her. "Section 4.6. C," he said. Flat. "I'm looking at it now." Silence. "Your family's public remarks, social media posts, and investor dinner transcripts all qualify as disparagement. Several were timestamped and geotagged. Some even linked directly to your profile." She said nothing. He continued, now clinical. "Clause states that any verbal or digital statements made by family members, in the presence of the engaged party without objection, shall be considered tacitly endorsed by said party." Still nothing. He sighed. "It's enforceable. And ironclad." Her father's jokes. Her sister's Instagram captions. Her silence at that dinner, that brunch, that broadcast. Every moment she let me be dressed up as the joke version of myself. It was logged. And now, there would be no payout. No stake. No shares. The wedding venue was quietly canceled. The florist deposit, forfeited. The photographer posted an opening on Instagram. She called Damon. He didn't pick up. She called my old number. Out of service. She drove by the Kronos office listed on the LinkedIn page. It wasn't even ours. Just a WeWork mailbox with a forwarding address. She sat in her car outside for nearly an hour. Engine idling. Eyes glazed. The ring still on her finger. Less a symbol now, more of a punchline. Later that night, her sister texted her. "Wait. Are you telling me you really signed that thing?" No reply. Her lawyer followed up the next day with final confirmation. "All prior asset-sharing expectations are null. Future earnings of Kronos or any affiliate entities are separate property. You retain what you brought in. Nothing more." She stared at the sentence for a long time. She had brought something in once, her presence, her confidence, her social shine. But those things only mattered if the other person believed they were rare. And I had long since stopped believing. The day she posted that "Loader life, but cute" caption, that's when I started designing the kill switch. She'd mistaken compliance for comfort. My silence for softness. But I was never building a marriage. I was building an escape route with legal clearance. Now it had executed perfectly. Clean. Silent. Irrevocable. The screen glowed in amber tones above the rooftop bar, humming quietly above the clink of glasses and low conversations. It was late, and cool wind traced across concrete and steel. The skyline of the city stretched around us like a finished blueprint. Nothing left to design, only to admire. The bartender had muted the volume, but the closed captions were enough. The same segment played again. Third airing in 24 hours. "The rise of Kronos logistics has rewritten what we thought we knew about infrastructure tech," the anchor said. The words ticked slowly across the bottom of the screen. "The man who broke supply chains and built a better one." Beside me, Damon leaned back, sipping an old-fashioned, tie loosened, eyes half-lidded from the week's weight finally lifting. "You know," he said, "I always thought you were crazy. Quiet. Brilliant. Maybe a little psychotic. But crazy." I raised my glass. "It worked." He laughed. "You think she's watching this right now?" I didn't answer, but we both knew. Because across town, in a penthouse that once hosted mockery dressed up as civility, her father stood at his kitchen island, red-faced, rewriting a statement for the fourth time. Kronos caught us off guard, wasn't going to cut it. Not with investors circling like buzzards. Not with LPs calling twice an hour asking why this deal hadn't crossed his desk. He threw out, "Kronos misrepresented," then deleted it. Legal had warned him, too much exposure. Now he was settling on neutrality. Translation: defeat. Her sister, meanwhile, was quietly purging. Instagram posts from the engagement period gone. Stories archived. Twitter locked. Even the smug reel where she'd mocked my forklift gloves to Billie Eilish vanished. But screenshots live forever. They always forget that. And her? She was watching. I could feel it, like an old ache in a healed scar. She was sitting alone, lights off, TV reflecting in tear-glossed eyes, watching the man she thought she outgrew become the man she never understood. Her phone was quiet. The usual group chats had gone cold. She tried texting me again 2 days ago. I let it sit, like the call I got just now, from an old investor who once told Damon I was too operational to lead, and that Kronos was optimizing the wrong century. The phone buzzed twice on the table, then went still. I didn't even glance at it, because the volume flicked back on, and the segment was closing. And while the CEO of Kronos has declined all interview requests, sources confirm the company's valuation is now north of $900 million, with distribution pilots expanding into 4 new territories. The anchor smiled into the camera. Kronos may be quiet, but it's speaking volumes. Damon raised his glass again. To silence. We clinked. Below us, the city buzzed. Trucks moved. Systems ran. And every inch of it now passed through code I wrote while they laughed over wine. I didn't need to respond. I didn't need to explain. The world had spoken for me, and it spoke clearly.